we tend to hold on to certain beliefs and we tend to hold on to certain truths. And we are fooling ourselves. My job is not to be liked by my clients. My job is to help them. Radical honesty sometimes is way more important than empathy. So my job is to balance these two things. Your emotions are not you. Your thoughts are not you. Your beliefs, your core assumptions are not you. They're a product of social conditioning. They serve you well, but they should not sit behind the steering wheel. You should sit behind the steering wheel.
You're up high, give me 5, give me everything you can tell me now, and tell me the things you have learned. Running and crying, falling and flying. Over to you.
Hi Five Guys, this is Joel, and today we have a Wisdom Wednesday, which means that I have an interesting person here next to me who's talking about the 5 things he would have loved to know when he was 20. And as you might see if you're following us on YouTube in the background, we're under palms here in Vietnam, because this lovely man here next to me, he's from Hungary but lives in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City to be exact. And his name is Zsolt Tököli. And Zsolt is an executive coach and corporate trainer. And actually, I'm not going to tell you guys too much about him because I guess by talking to him, it's much more interesting to get into touch with all this. So today, I'm really, really curious because Lars, my friend from Gradient, said, oh, you need to talk to Zsolt. He's the coolest coach ever. He brought so much stuff into my life. Yeah, so this is a journey of curiosity today, I guess. So nice to meet you.
What a pleasure.
I always start asking people for their age. I know it's really rude, especially in Asia, but it's interesting to understand, like, from what point of time do we look back to the 20? How old are you?
I'm 53.
53, okay.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit.
Do you want me to be younger?
No, I love it that way. I love it.
Okay, I can go back if you want me to.
No, you're perfect. But let's dive a bit into your life maybe in advance before we start right with the 5 different things. How does it come that an Hungarian lives in Vietnam?
Well, I only had one job in my life, helping people and organizations change. And I did that for a long time in Hungary, growing with a training company that turned into an HR consulting company. And in 2012, I had the opportunity to move to Singapore, which was a fascinating trip. I think it's very helpful for everyone to leave their home country, hometown, and get slapped on the face by a radically different culture. That was Singapore for me. And after a few years, I actually had a project here in Ho Chi Minh City, and I fell in love with Vietnam. I think you probably know what I'm talking about, the vibes, the people, the colors, it's all amazing. So I found my new home in Vietnam for the past 8 years.
Yeah, vibe is the perfect word to describe this, because I tend to say you need to sit on a Vespa once and travel across Ho Chi Minh City to understand it, and it's right there, right?
It is right there. The chaos and the kindness at the same time. Unbelievable.
Yeah, no road rage. That's the funny part. It's so chaotic, but at the same time, quite peaceful in a way.
Kind of nice, yeah.
I always compare it with fish. Like big fish swarm that goes to the sea and, everyone works together. And the food, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But anyway, let's get into details. As I said, 5 things I wish I knew when I was 20. What's your first thing?
I only have one thing, Joel.
One. Okay.
Can we break the pattern? Are we okay with that? Because you will see my one thing is in a way a reflection on the 5 things. It is about the 5 things, 5 truths. So if you're okay with that, let's see, breaking the pattern. I know it hurts. It's a lovely pattern, right? It's a lovely.
I feel slightly uncomfortable, but I'm curious where it leads me to. So yeah, let's step into it.
Anything I can do to make you more comfortable?
Yeah, tell me the one. So
okay. Before I tell you the big framework, I was wondering if you would like to do a quick exercise.
I love exercises, of course.
Okay, so it's something I do all the time in training and coaching. It's a very quick one called unfinished sentences. You have talked to hundreds of successful leaders in the podcast. They have shared their 5 things with you, insights, takeaways. I was wondering, could you complete this sentence for me? Great leaders are.
empathetic, adaptable, innovative, team-oriented, creative.
Okay, that sounds like a laundry list. Give me one that is like one that stands out the most for you, that speaks to you the most.
I would say it's two of them. The one is the ability to adapt, to change. And the second one is to care for people, to take them into consideration, to take them with you.
So one is the ability to change, to adapt, and the other is to care about people around you, team members, colleagues, friends, family, stuff like that. If you have to choose one.
You're really talking like a coach.
Yeah.
I guess I would go for adaptability.
Okay. Great leaders are able to adapt new situations. Okay, my question would be, can you dig a little bit deeper about where does this belief come from? What's the history?
Short interjection is really funny. Now I need to think.
Yeah, you do.
That's a lecturer's situation.
I apologize for this, making you think. I know it's painful.
The thing is, I witnessed that quite a few people, I come from Germany, and in Germany right now it's so that change is really hard for a lot of people. Yeah. And then I came to the realization that change, being different tomorrow than you have been today, is actually an essential part of life. You need to change all the time, whether it's from kindergarten to school to whatever, to university, etc. So the ability to interact with your surroundings and to change yourself seems to me really important, because if you want to lead others, you need to be able to adapt with your environment. And I guess this is where it comes from, that quite often I see Germans like, we did this that way all the time. It was done like that forever. Why should we change it? Maybe that's very German, but this is what I witness, and I always tend to say, why? Come on, let's do it differently, or let's take this route to work. And funnily, I haven't been like that in the very beginning, because I can remember my first intern, he always was kind of sad because we always went to the same dinner place or lunch place when we had lunch. He said, hey, come on, we're living in Berlin here. It's so full of food. Why not try something else? I said, okay. So we went to a different place and I took the same meal over and over again. And then slowly after months and years of, being in the startup ecosystem, I started changing. But anyway, I digress. This is
You always went for the same dish.
Kind of.
Similar dishes.
Yeah. Close to each other. I would, or chicken curry or something like that. I wouldn't go for I don't know, crabs or so.
Yeah.
How do you call it? Seashells or something.
Yeah.
Because of being, how would you call it? Not being afraid, but being careful in a way.
You don't know what could happen if you take those seafood.
Yeah, mushroom, seashells, for instance. Whenever I saw a movie where someone is puking really, really badly, they always had seashells.
It's always seafood, right?
It's always seafood.
You gotta be careful. Yeah, it makes sense. So here's the question I would ask if you were sitting in my coaching seat. The ability to adapt and openness to change. What are the situations when it might actually get in your way, this belief?
You mean when it's not helpful to be able to adapt?
That's exactly what I mean.
Well, obviously in situations that ask for the same way of doing something over and over again. For instance, if you're in the industry and you're a car manufacturer and you need to do the stuff always in the same quality, in the same way, then obviously it doesn't help too much if you're a guy like myself, who's slightly neurodiverse, who's always interested in new stuff, in exchange, and no, let's do it differently. It's so boring. For instance, whenever I have to do some kind of checklist, I do the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, and then all of a sudden, it would be fun to do the 10th thing or the 15th thing. So this is actually a situation where it isn't helpful, I would say.
I see. And this is what I found fascinating. And this is what I can observe with basically every single executive that I work with, which is in our 20s, we are facing the big existential questions, right? How can I be successful? How can I differentiate myself from others? What am I better at than others? How can I be happy? and we find some answers, right? And throughout the years, those are accomplishments, achievements, reinforce those answers. So by our 30s and 40s, what happens is that those beliefs, those truths, quote unquote, calcify into identity.
Mhm.
At that point, we cannot even see those truths from a distance. It's just the way things are. And that is a problem. I call this the answer trap. There is a massive problem because 20 years have passed and we rely on certain realizations and truths from our 20s. Of course we do that because those made us successful, right? We have data to prove that they work. The problem is that we are in a radically different situation. We are in different position, maybe at a different company, different industry, different life stage. Everything has changed around us, but we still hold on to those truths because they worked before. And when we face situations that they don't necessarily work before, we're looking for clues to blame the circumstances instead of questioning those truths. And I think this phenomenon is, in my experience, happened to every single successful leader, every single person, I would say. This phenomenon of being stuck with our answers that are coming from decades ago.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would sometimes even think that it was the child age where quite a few people form their identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where they behave in a way. I just recently had a podcast about hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, when you're in this conscious state, what happens is I can dig through your ideas inside of your head because the brain only works in present time.
Mhm.
It does not know past and it does not know future. So basically you could say every way of acting makes sense, but it might not make sense right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because your brain might have picked up something in the past. For instance, I don't know. I am used to being alone because my parents worked so much, so I'm used to helping myself. I struggle to take the help of others.
I'm happy to be independent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this might be a belief you build up in your child age. And in the present day, where you work in a big company, where you have a team, it might be totally disrespectful or actually negative for your way of working. But it makes sense from a brain perspective because it was built here and is now applied here. So, but coming back to the topic, as you said, it's these identity themes you see which are built up but aren't changed over time.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, what do you do with your clients then?
Okay. May I tell you a story, field story, actual story? So I was working with a politician, very high level, like let's say top 3 political position holder in her respective country. She's a lady. And she asked me a very simple thing. Election campaign was coming up. Her opponents were very charismatic, great communicators. She wanted to be better at charisma and specifically being funny on stage. TV debates, those kind of things, right? And I was like, okay, I'm happy to help you. So I shadowed her, I watched her in public events. She was flat. She was bland, boring, cold, distant. So we sat down and we have a conversation about it. Turns out she was super funny when we talked, right? She was like literally making me laugh and I'm supposed to be like the serious coach. And I was like, hey, hang on, what is going on here? And there are 2 different personas at work for her, the public persona and the private persona. So I asked her, okay, I asked her a similar question actually. How would you finish the sentence, great politicians are? And she immediately gave me an answer. She didn't have the laundry list like yours, okay? She told me, great politicians are classy like the Queen of England. That was the role model. It started from a very early age. I think her teenage years, the Queen of England back then was classy, elegant, respectable, right? And she carried that image and it turned into from this is what I want to be into this is who I am. And this is who exactly who I'm supposed to be. So at that point, there is no point talking about how to crack jokes on stage, right? Because if I give her the skills, if I talk her about timing and telling stories and all that technical stuff, it would have bounced back because there's a larger power at work, which is classy like the Queen of England. Don't be a clown. She literally used these words with me. Like, I'm not supposed to be a clown. So I should be elegant, classy in my behavior. So we had to work with the identity before we ever talk about communication, right? And that is a larger power that prevents the very change that she desired. She knew she had to be funny, but there was a larger invisible power at play that prevented the very change she desired.
So actually, identity overrode behavior.
Yeah.
Behavior followed from identity.
It does. It does. It's a larger power. So what can we do is the question. What to do about it? The thing is, like, I see this, my favorite metaphor for this is downloading apps, right? When you see an interesting new idea, it's like downloading a new app, right? Boom, that's fascinating. Okay, I download it. You read a book. There's an interesting idea in that. Okay, I download that app. You listen to a podcast conversation with Joel, and there's a guest who's telling the 5 things, and 2 of them are really resonating with you. It's like downloading an app. What happens to your phone when you download too many apps?
It gets full out of space.
And it slows down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has a real serious impact on the speed. So my metaphor is upgrading the op system instead of downloading new apps. So what we do is, I'm not giving her new ideas about how to be funny. We're talking about the operating system, which is the identity level work. So first step is, let's examine the triggers. What are the situations that triggers her to be classy? When does the queen trigger, we called it, enter the picture? Okay, and basically it was like almost all the time when I'm surrounded by journalists, cameras, voters, that's the trigger, be like the queen. Okay, the second step is, what is the emotional, psychological need behind this trigger? Because most of the time there is some sort of a psychological need that creates that trigger. And for her, that need was respect. I want people to treat me respected. I want to look and be someone who is worthy of respect. Okay, good. That's a very healthy, that belief and the whole queen idea. Let me give you a quick footnote here. This is not coming from trauma. This is not a self-limiting belief, right? This is not wrong. I want to be classy. There's no problem with that. It's kind of like, it's important to adapt to change. This is a noble, genuinely supportive ideas. So we're not fighting demons here. We're fighting something that is genuinely helpful. But in her case, it worked against her. So step number 3, what could be the second voice? The first voice is, be like the queen, right? That's the automatic response, the unquestionable trigger, be like the queen. Second voice is, what can you learn yourself to think? What should be the second internal voice in your head as a response to the first voice, which is be like the queen? And we worked a lot about that because we needed to resolve the conflict of being funny and being classy. In her mind, that was a contradiction. They two could not live together. So we were watching YouTube videos, Joey, like, who could be politicians who are respected, classy, yet funny, right? We needed to redefine the identity. And we ended up with Obama.
Yeah, I would have the same idea.
You had the same in mind. Yeah, it's a perfect example for that. Regardless of politics, he is a very charming, charismatic politician, and he is well respected. So what we did was this was the code word Obama. This was a second voice. Whenever she felt like, okay, I need to be classy now, Queen trigger, we discussed many times, okay, be like Obama, be Obama, okay? You can be funny, charismatic, informal even. You can shorten the distance between yourself and the audience. And then when you accept that, you start acting naturally, the jokes will come.
And from your experience, does it work to overcome these obstacles inside of your mind by creating mindful exercises like this? Because what I witness is, it's somehow, I once learned about trauma that it's written in the body and that it's hard to get out because it's written in the body, so you need to solve it in the body. And I realized you could go to therapy for ages and talk about the shit and nothing happens really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yet coaching, I would say, in the sense of, I mean, usually I would say coaching is also about intervention. Coaching is a little different than therapy. It's more intense. It's more like about exercises. But still, I had the idea that sometimes people still stick to these all autopilot modes. You know, the apps you just mentioned, you're installing into your system. Sometimes they aren't updated. So they get more and more and more and more. And quite often people go into this autopilot mode. Is it really possible to get out of this just by, building up mental ideas?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it easy? No. We are fighting decades of conditioning here, right? Because those ideas, even if they start from our teenage years, they got reinforced by our accomplishments, right? By the external environment, by our parents, by the teachers, by our friends. So basically, it's literally fighting decades of conditioning. So, and I'm not necessarily saying that the only way to approach this is to find like a code word like Obama. It worked for her. For other people, it works differently. For other people, the second voice could be something like, calm down, this is fine. Or the second voice could be something like, you got this. So there are different ways. Sometimes I don't even talk about second voices. We just experiment. For example, I work with an executive who was probably the most logical, rational person I've ever met. Why? Turns out that was a differentiating factor at school when he was bullied a little bit, and his smarts were the thing that made her feel good about himself, right? That was the differentiating factor. So he identified with critical thinking, rational thinking, numbers, data. When does it work against him is when he needs to open up to his team members, to be emotional, to show emotions, to acknowledge emotions on their side, right? So there were no code words for this. For this, we were using experimentation. Okay, there will be a low stakes meeting coming up, an offsite that is a team building. You cannot really lose much. How about trying opening that offsite with a personal keynote speech about your life, something that you haven't shared with your team members before. So it's like baby steps. There was no need for identifying a second voice because the trigger was not that strong, if it makes sense.
What would you say, is there some kind of best before date when it comes to these triggers or these, how long do they last?
And when is it too late, right?
Yeah.
When is it like, that's it, you're gone, this is who you are, this is who you will be? I don't think there's an expiration date. I really don't think so. I believe that people can be helped to create a distance between themselves and their beliefs. It's never too late. Yeah, the more it has calcified, the more difficult it is to challenge that. But the simple idea of do not identify with your beliefs, do not be a prisoner of your assumptions, that's a powerful idea that works at any age, basically.
And I mean, from what you just said, I learned it isn't black or white, it's somehow grayscale. Because on the one hand, it does help you a lot. I guess the guy whose logic made quite a good career up to a certain point, or the politician obviously also made it to the top 3 of a country. But then there are different situations where you stand in your way.
That's exactly what it is. Joel, I think you got this very, very accurately. We tend to think in oversimplified terms. And I would approach this thing from a complexity angle. Our life in 2026 on this planet is super complex. It's way more complex than we could understand, right? So there's a natural desire in everyone to have simple answers, the black and white, as you mentioned. And that's why, just a side note, populism is so widespread all over the world, because it provides simple answers to very complex questions, right? I could name a lot of examples. I don't want to. Maybe that's not our job here. So there's a general tendency to find oversimplified answers wherever we look. And it's a trap, because life is very complex. So I think this is exactly the process that you described.
I can remember a relative of my wife just said, he wrote in an SMS, "Oh, wow, your husband is a genius." And I said this to a friend. I said, "Look how nice he is." He said, "I'm a genius. How lovely is that?" And she's a psychologist. And he said, that's really a big compliment, because geniuses basically died out. The last universal genius is like 300 to 500 years ago. Goethe, you might say, was the last universal genius. Why? Because it's not that life got more complicated, but that the amount of information we get out of this complexity has increased. Yeah, in the past it was, you had these newspapers and it took ages until you learn all this stuff. But the amount of knowledge is so much bigger now that you can't be a genius anymore. So I'm not saying I'm a genius. I just like this compliment, and the idea of life got so complex that it's impossible that one person is able to understand most of the world.
One lifetime is not enough.
Yeah,
exactly. You cannot read all the books that you would like to read. You cannot watch all the movies that you would like to watch.
Yeah.
You cannot meet all the people you would like to meet. That's the complexity we're facing, and it's really hard for everyone to deal with that idea, the complexity. So what we do, we oversimplify. We tend to hold on to certain beliefs, and we tend to hold on to certain truths. And we are fooling ourselves, basically.
And now you did the same thing. You did some kind of simplification by asking her what is the one aspect a great politician had.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in her there is more than one autopilot, right? It's not only the classical, I need to be like the British Queen. I guess there's more. How to deal with that if you have different ideas of your identity that actually combine? Do you do it like spaghetti, that you take one out after the other and then the next follows?
The funny thing is this. That's a very good question, actually. You don't need to work with the spaghetti. It's more like a hamburger. So there's the bread, and in the middle there's the meat. And what I have found is that for most executives that I work with, the reason for being lost or being held up is one core issue that is an identity issue. It's not there are like 6 identity issues that I only have to solve one by one. The spaghetti, no, the meat in the middle is one core assumption or belief. And if you resolve that, everything falls into place.
I've got a word for that. I was told by a coach, a coach in performance, relief, stress relief, and sleep. And he said, every one of us has a big domino. It's that one domino that if you make it fall, it takes all the other dominoes.
That's a great metaphor. I love it. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it turns back into, I work with executives who came to me with an issue. We started to work an issue. We identified the core belief that prevents from unlocking their potential. And then they brought another issue. Oh, by the way, let's talk about communication as well, because we only talked about decision making. And it turns out that communication path led back to the same identity issue as well. So the good news is that we don't have to fight several demons at the same time. The bad news is that the one demon we have
is returning.
Scary enough. Yeah. That's scary and large and dark enough. Yeah.
What was your demon, the demon you built up?
My demon was a lonely demon, actually. The way I finished the sentence when I was at the early stages of my career, great trainers are, great coaches are, empathy. That was my northern star. be empathetic. It's always helpful. It's always good. It's unquestionable, right? And I still remember the moment when it changed. You want to hear the story?
Of course, this guy here.
Okay, it's a very funny story. Can we use swear words here?
I love swear words.
Oh, you do? Okay. I wasn't sure about that. So I'm in Budapest working with a Hungarian executive. He worked with, actually, it was a German multinational company, and all his managers were German. Okay, and we've been working for like half a year at that time, and we had a coaching session when he constantly brings up issues with his managers, because the Germans always like this, because the Germans always like that. You have to really understand what is their expectations. Sometimes they don't communicate in a very straightforward way, stuff like that. Coaching session is over. Okay, and we're walking back to a place, and we are on the streets of Budapest, and he continues complaining about the German managers. And I was like, I'm thinking, you are fooling yourself. This is self-deception. How the hell can I get you out of this trap, right? And at one point, I looked at him and, excuse me for my French, I said, fuck you. And in Hungarian, it involves his mother, so it's even worse. Okay, it's really bad stuff. Okay, and I remember he looked at me like shocked, and I was shocked too, because I never used those words ever before in business, right? And we both looked like, now what? It's like, what's gonna happen now? And it was a shock for him because nobody told him fuck you before. And it was a shock for me because I never used those words before. And I realized that we both needed that shock. He needed that shock. He needed that slap on his face because he was lost in pointing fingers. And empathy, my guiding light, was not good enough to help him get out of that trap. Right? It was just not enough. And I needed that as well. It was a breakthrough for me too, because I realized that my empathy idea translates to be nice to your clients. It translates to please your clients. And at that point, I'm not really helping them, right? I wanted them to like me, and I put empathy as a clothes on that psychological need. I wanted to be liked by my clients. And empathy is the perfect tool for that. Saying fuck you is a horrible tool for being liked, right? So that was the breakthrough for me. Like, empathy in 95% of the cases is super useful. We just had a conversation before it started about the importance of empathy, right? Maybe 97%, maybe 99%. I'm not going to talk against empathy, but there are some situations when the idea of empathy is holding you back.
So it was basically one of these situations we just talked about where it stand in your way.
Yeah,
it didn't lead to the outcome you would have loved.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I know that the answer isn't important, but what happened
after that conversation? Well, so we are on the street, speechless, both of us. And because we were on a friendly basis, we already had the trust between us. He suggested okay, let's sit down and talk. Instead of going back to the office, we had like a second session. And I told him, look, I didn't plan to say this. I think this is the reason why I said this. I think I've become upset with your finger pointing and your excuses, and I really want to help you. And he was like, you know what, you're right. I know I needed that. So that was a breakthrough moment for him, and to create a new relationship with him and excuses.
And you said that your demon was the wish for empathy.
Mhm.
What was the reason for that? What was the biography behind that?
Now you're doing the coaching for me.
No,
Good job. Yeah, I as I've told you, I wanted to be liked by my clients. That was the main driving force. I wanted to have new businesses. I wanted to work with me, wanted them to work with me for a long time. I wanted to be liked. And I thought empathy is the best way to do that. And that was a wrong assumption because my job is not to be liked by my clients. My job is to help them. And sometimes it takes standing up and saying harsh words. Radical honesty sometimes is way more important than empathy. So my job is to balance these two things and understand when I'm trying to be empathetic, when I'm just trying to basically please my clients. This is the biography.
And why was it that you wanted to be loved?
Why I wanted to be loved? We're digging very deep now, right?
Yeah, if you feel comfortable with it, absolutely. I'm happy to listen.
I don't think there's a simple answer to that, right? Oversimplification that we discussed. It definitely comes from my childhood, broken family, some real difficulties between my parents, only child. So I'm pretty sure that's part of the equation. It's another part of the equation is that I wanted to be successful as a coach. This was a new thing for me back then. And a measure of success if they want to continue working with me. So I have to please them, right? And a third element must have been a misinterpretation of how to be respectful towards my clients, right? I thought respectful means that I'm always talking nice and professional. But that's a misinterpretation because it prevents me from being radically honest, which my clients appreciate a lot more. So there's several elements. I don't want to oversimplify.
There's one horrible aspect about this. There's a young man who wants to be loved and who says, well, the longer my clients do the booking here, the fuller my books are, the better the job is I did. Yet, if you do your job correctly, they will leave you. Your help should be done at some point, right?
It's a trap. Absolutely. You're absolutely right to point this out. And I think for many coaches, including me, that is a crucial point of understanding when to let your clients go. When are they ready to fly? And you might be holding them back with your thoughts. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
What does it do for you? To you? How does it feel for you
to let them go? I think if you ask this question to a 20-something Zsolt, it would have been failure. The answer would have been I would have felt like I failed. Now it's a lot more like my clients have graduated. This is the best way to describe it. They're ready to enter a new stage. They have the demons they're fighting. They have been tamed. So that's a sort of a graduation.
My friend who told me the story about the universal geniuses, she's a psychologist, as I said, and she always talks about portal people. She says there are portals you need to step through, and there are people who help you through these portals, but there are also people like the end boss in a video game that try to prevent you from going through these portals.
That's a good metaphor.
I like it as well. And yeah, funny. So, okay, I just learned that the one thing you would have loved to know when you were 20 is that it works this way, that beliefs turn into identity, and that these beliefs and the identity that forms out of this.
Don't be a prisoner of your beliefs. Yeah. I think that, and this is like, it's a little bit of a meta approach to your question, because 5 things, 5 truths, basically, right? And this idea that I shared with you, don't be a prisoner of your beliefs, is not about the content. It's not about what are the right truths for you. It's about what is your relationship to truths, which is a very, very different angle, a different approach. So I was listening to a podcast. It's fascinating. There are some very interesting eye-opener ideas. None of them are universally true. And I think one of the most important questions that everybody should ask is, am I ready to live a life without universal, unquestionable truths? Because there are no universal, unquestionable truths.
The tricky part about this is, I guess, it scares the shit out of people. Because it does.
It's so important. You're absolutely right, Joel. The most important question I ask myself when I start a new coaching process is, should I bring this idea into our conversations? Is my client ready to face the mirror that his or her truths are half-truths? It's a very important question because some people are not ready for it. Some people would be shaken to the core, and because it's a long journey to create a new relationship with your truths, they go back to their truths. And what is calcified will be even more calcified. So in my work, it's essential to find the right moment to bring this to the open.
Yet the nice part for you is that if this is correct, you build up pillars where you put your life on, build your life on and your identity. And if the insight so far is that these pillars need to change because for different reasons, they might not work for you anymore at a certain point in time, it means that you build new ones. And as you said, your demon might return in level 2 or level 3. So then Zsolt is needed again, maybe from a different perspective, which is quite funny. And full stop.
Yeah. My favorite example for that, if we were talking about portals, I assume you have seen the movie The Matrix.
Yes.
So the most memorable moment in the first Matrix movie is when Neo starts to see the Matrix, right? The green code, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how I describe when people's eyes are open to their truths and the limited nature of their truths and beliefs. It's like you start to see the Matrix. Like your emotions are not you. Your thoughts are not you. Your beliefs, your core assumptions are not you. They're a product of social conditioning. They serve you well, but they should not sit behind the steering wheel. You should sit behind the steering wheel. And that is an amazing moment. So when someone asks me, and clients ask me quite often, what is the happiness thing? How could I be happy? I work with a lot of people who are filthy rich and not happy, right? This is probably the best I could approach that question without oversimplification. Is like, once you are not captive of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, Harvard University professor Robert Kagan calls it the subject-object movement. If anyone wants to read more about this, that's what I would recommend. Subject are ideas, beliefs, emotions that you identify with. Objects are things that you can see from a distance. And that movement is so liberating. It's literally liberating. You're not a prisoner anymore. And that is just, I think, probably the best course towards happiness.
I guess this is a magical moment because you're also connecting the dots. Everything makes sense from one second to the other.
Exactly.
In German, we say the coin has fallen because my cling, 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 and now you got this, or it felt like snow from my eyes. This is how you say it.
Yeah.
And I can totally imagine. Is it that do you have this moment more often than once, or is it a once in a lifetime thing? Just understand the mechanics once, you read the Matrix, or do you need to read it again and again?
I think the first big moment, the aha moment, is special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very memorable for most people. Most people can remember, I talked to my clients 10 years back, 5 years back, and they're like, yeah, I remember when you told me about that. But it needs to be reinforced because unconsciously we gravitate back to our old truths. is so comfortable. That's like a safe haven for us, especially when we are in a crisis, or when we are facing conflicts, or when we are under pressure, or when we are bullied, or when we feel lost. We unconsciously immediately rush back to the old truths because they served comfort for us, safe haven.
I heard this, that sometimes people tend to stay in a situation that is negative for them, but it's known. You know how the situation feels and you know what happens there, even though it might be harmful to you.
Yes.
It's like, for instance, a woman that gets hit from her husband. Maybe she got hit when she was a kid and know how to, act so that her parents gave her attention or whatsoever. Maybe it's a bad example, but this was actually the situation I came across this. I said, why would you stay in that situation? Because it's familiar.
The familiarity. Yeah, exactly. That gives us fake comfort. And that's a psychological need. Comfort is a crucial psychological need. Yeah, absolutely.
Does it make a difference when we talk about this identity formation again, if you're a traumatized person? I mean, trauma is a word that is slightly overused, to be honest. Everyone has trauma right now. Yet, I realized that it's even sometimes people do not remember stuff. So their brain even blacks out stuff because it was so horrible what happens to them. So does it make a difference if you have a trauma-inducted thing in your mind going on?
That's a very good question. And as an executive coach, I don't enter therapy. I think it's very important for us to know our limitations, and I'm not a therapist. So I don't assume that I have a ready-to-made answer for you. What I observed is that the calcification of core beliefs, those beliefs could come from trauma, could come from pain, bullying, abuse, or they could come from positive role models, like be like the Queen of England. It doesn't really matter what is the biography. It doesn't really matter what is the content of the belief. The process will happen to you. The calcification will happen to you. So that would be my answer. I assume that when there's trauma involved and our brain is protecting us, as you describe, that's probably even longer process and longer journey.
Because my guess is that in your space, successful business people or politicians or top athletes, quite often they have trauma or negative situations.
They do, absolutely. Why they want to prove themselves so hard? Why they have this extraordinary drive? There is something there. There was something there. It's dad, it's mom, it's the class, whatever it is. Like, yeah, usually extraordinary performances reflect back on very powerful psychological needs that were unmet, unsatisfied.
And now getting back to you for a second, you described your process, understanding the triggers, then the emotional aspects behind that, and then the second voice. What was your second voice? Was this the moment you just described where you said, fuck you, and with the insult, you're insulting the mother of that guy? And was that coming to your mind always? Was this your second?
Yes. Right now, I'm basically, whenever I work with an executive, I always tell them fuck you and talk about their mom.
I would have loved that.
Okay, it took you 1 second to get the joke. Yeah, that was an intense second.
I saw the possibility of you're doing that.
Being serious, yeah. The process is like, I'm aware. It becomes once you do enough self-work, and I hope I did enough self-work on my relationship to empathy and kindness towards people, it becomes second nature that you always like, okay, I feel a very strong compassion for my client. I want to encourage them. I want to support them. But hang on. There's this immediate, it's like the first voice, the immediate trigger, we cannot really control that. And you can reach a level when the second voice will become automatic as well. Hang on, this is the empathy voice speaking. Hang on, this is the don't be a clown voice speaking. And then you can just overrule that voice, silence that voice if the situation requires for something else.
Now, the funny part about your question was, I realized that you actually did two things. You said a perfect leader looks like was your
Great leaders are.
great leaders are. In your case, you said great trainers are.
Yeah.
Then great politicians are. So what it contains are basically two things. It's the noun, like what's the role we're talking about,
Right.
and then it's the adjective. What does this person make?
Yeah.
How do you come always to that space, deciding what's the role a person relies with or feels comfortable with?
They tell me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They always do.
It comes from them. Yeah. I'm not forcing a role on them that you are a dad, you are a leader, you are a communicator, you are a podcaster. What is your identity? What describes you the best? And then we work with that.
Because funnily, going back to the beginning of our talk, I remember my one was being adaptable, right?
Yeah.
And I come from a situation where as a child, I needed to be very adaptable. Everything was very uncertain and was dangerous in a way. And this is why I love to be adaptable. So funnily enough, it's really interesting that you take the role one someone identifies with and then give one adjective to it, one aspect, and it fires back to your whole history or your development, your identity. That's interesting.
So fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, how did you come up with it? Did you steal it from a philosopher, or is it like
Everybody steals everything in
Yeah.
training and coaching, right? It's like unfinished sentences started for me as a warm-up exercise in trainings. Instead of everybody just introducing themselves, I offer them 5 sentences, actually, 5 unfinished sentences. And they share, we go in a round and they share, like, the first one is always people usually. That is the most open, unfinished sentence you can imagine, people usually. And then we go about great leaders are, as for me, this is always the last sentence. So we turn the spotlight to themselves. And then it gives it's funny, especially when we compare. People usually are, what is your answer? What is my answer? Oh, we've had the same thing. Oh, it's very different. It's funny. But also it gives the trainer a lot of deeper understanding of who are the people in the room.
Are you good in bonding?
Define bonding and define good. And then I can answer your question.
Well,
Connecting to people?
Mhm.
I hope I'm good. Without connecting to people, I cannot do my job. I need them feel comfortable, safe, and I need them feel that they can trust me because they can trust me. So yeah, it's pretty much essential.
The funny thing is, I'm imagining this like you come to a room and I guess quite a few people are easily liking you. I think you're easily likable and you connect with them. But the interesting part is how much vulnerability do you show them from your side? And you know what I mean? There are levels of connecting and bonding in a way. And I even ask myself whether your job prevents you from bonding too intensely on your side because it might interfere with your role.
It does occasionally. And I think this is one of the big questions for coaches and trainers. How much should I open up? Does it help my client? That's I've seen coaches and trainers who cannot stop talking about themselves. So especially when and this is what great leaders are. And I remember when I was doing a great leader thing, this is how it looked like. And they tell war stories, which doesn't really help. It only serves their ego, right? So coaches should be mindful of that. I try not to use myself as a positive example, and I love using my stories as a negative example, how I fucked up. It creates safety for my clients, and I think it always, it makes me human. It brings me down to the level of we're equals, we both fuck up, so we can talk honestly. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And my mind just travels to a situation where I was talking to a coach and I had the impression that how would you say that? He feels great about helping people because it makes him look good.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
And I think that this is a really, really dangerous way of approaching this job.
Yeah, it's a self-serving need. And I fully agree. I think at the beginning of my career, I shared that thing. I remember I had this outdoor exercise with a bunch of trainers that we did in Spain for a large car manufacturing company. And we did an exercise of climbing up to a pole, to the top of the pole, and it was a pair exercise. And I did that exercise before. It's a kind of a scary exercise. It's like an 8-meter high pole. And nobody else did in the group. So they created pairs and they walked up and it was fun. And I was like, yeah, I've been there, done that. I know this. But we were odd numbers. So someone needed me to help. So we had to go up. And I remember we were close to the top of the pole and I was like, yeah, you can go up first. And my partner was like, no, you go up first. I've been just on the top. And I was like, okay. And I got paralyzed. I could not move. And for like 2 minutes, we were just holding on to that pole at 8 meters high, and I could not move forward despite of the fact that I did that like a couple of times before. So I finally did it. We jumped off the pole, and my mind was racing like, what the hell happened here? What was that? And it took me like about half an hour, 1 hour when we had the debriefing. Remember, I'm among trainers, right? And I realized helping others helped me. So there was a self-serving need, very, very selfish, I might say. Like, it helps me to help other people. It puts me in a good light. It makes me feel good about myself. And I needed to create a new relationship with that idea. That I didn't want to be lost when I'm not in a position of helping others, and I wanted to be really helpful when I am in a position of helping others. So yeah, I fully agree. I can relate to that.
Are you able to take the help of others? Is this something you need to learn then as a coach, if you're usually on the other side of the helping aspect?
I've never seen a good coach who did not have coaching for themselves. And I think we need to clarify, why are we here? Why are we doing this? And go beyond the noble answers. Yeah, of course we want, it's the betterment of mankind, right? That's why we're here. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's a lot of selfish elements in that, which is fine, but you need to be aware, right? That's the thing.
My last question goes into this direction. How do you know which string to pull? Because if we're talking about this identity aspect, you have your way of doing it. So you give a role and then you have the unfinished sentences. Okay, that's clear. But still, I can imagine it's sometimes like fishing in the dark, you know? And also, what's the sign that you know the person is ready to turn the lights into themselves, to look into them?
That's a very good question, Joel. And I don't have a simple answer to that. Most of it is instincts, gut feeling. There are verbal clues, like whenever a client says always or never, that rings a, okay, these are hard-coded truths here, right? Germans always are like this. Vietnamese people never, however they finish the sentence, that is a hard-coded truth. So there is a level of thinking when you are captive of your truths. The stronger you are a prisoner of your beliefs, the more challenging it is to face reality. So the more I need to be patient and the more careful I am about bringing this up, right? If I hear an executive talking about different angles, different perspectives about the situation they're in, different read of the situation, different narratives, then usually that's a big green flag so that we can bring this topic in.
What you say, is there a percentage that you could name, like how many of the people that understand what you just described?
There is research about it.
Yeah?
Yeah. The percentage is not that high. You want to guess? What would be your educated guess?
17%.
17.
Mhm.
17%. Yeah, that's pretty close actually. It's hard to measure, right? But there's some research about it, and the rough number is around 15%. Depending on the culture, it's very culture dependent actually, because there are some cultures where these are the rules, you follow the rules, you don't stand out, right? And there are some cultures that are a lot more liberal and flexible and give individual space. But yeah, it's roughly 15-ish% of adults. We're talking about adults here.
Crazy.
Yeah. Humanity has a long journey ahead. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Speaking about journeys, Zsolt, I really enjoyed this journey. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
And I guess we should talk again sooner or later. That was really joyful. Thanks.
Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Wow, das war ein inspirierendes Gespräch, oder? Denk dran, abonnier den Podcast unbedingt, damit du keine Episode verpasst, und teile ihn auch total gerne mit deinen Freunden oder Kollegen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Bleib inspiriert und neugierig. Dein Joel. Gib mir 5 oder mehr, gib mir 8.